Hello and welcome to the Valley today. I am your host, Janet Michael. We are talking today to the Community Foundation of Northern Shenandoah Valley. I'm sure a lot of you know about them or have heard of the nonprofits and the different organizations that they work with and didn't understand how everything works behind the scenes. But Nancy Baker is here with me today. She is their executive director. Erik Beatley is joining her. He is the board chair for the Community Foundation, and we're going to learn a little bit about what they do, how they do it, who they do it for. Nancy, Erik, thank you both for joining me today.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you. Great to be here.
So, Erik, let me start with you as board chair. I know Nancy is fairly new in her position. Give me an overview of the Community Foundation. Who are you guys? How long have you been around? Do the 411 download for me.
So we've been around 20 years. We started after a Rotary meeting. Rotarians got together and decided that they wanted to form a community foundation, which are common across the country. A community foundation is the community's nonprofits and donors savings account. We're focused on long-term sustainability for nonprofits, for donors that want to leave a legacy and continue to give well beyond when they're no longer here. We're also here for donors who have a specific cause that's near and dear to them, that they can continue to give annually to that cause, both while they're here and in legacy giving. So we have a variety of funds that serve both the donors and the nonprofits in the community. And what we do is we take all those funds and we pool them and we invest them with a company called Mason Investments. And they specialized in community foundation investing. So they have an expertise in the long-term investing, because if you're investing as a person, you know that you have a limited time here, but community foundations have a forever timeline. So it's a little different way of thinking when you invest funds. And so because we pool the funds, and currently we're getting close to about $17 million in invested funds, a small nonprofit that may have a few $100,000 in the bank, not achieving any interest income, can invest with us. They become part of that pool. And so they get to invest in a pool that has access to investment vehicles as if they were a $17 million fund. Another benefit is they get the reduction in fees from the investment as it's a larger fund. So the more money you have invested, the lower the fee is. And so you get that benefit. It provides a great service. We also do have a lot of funds and family funds. So we also grant out money every year. So we run a grant cycle. This year, we're happy to report that we're going to give away $100,000 alone just through our grant cycle. So those are folks that have set up funds that we go out to the community, to the nonprofits. We have an online grant application. You go in, you fill it out, and we gather those grants, filter them out based upon the donors' requests, and then ultimately either our grant committee or the donors will select where those grants go. So we perform a lot of functions for the nonprofit sector for donors. We're also the physical agent for several nonprofits. So an upstart nonprofit that they're not quite prepared to get their nonprofit designation with the Internal Revenue Service. They can come to us and we can serve as their nonprofit, get them started. And once they get large enough or once they build the scale, then they either decide to stay with us because they love the relationship, or they then are large enough to get their own nonprofit status. And so we kind of act as an incubator for smaller nonprofits as well.
It really checks a lot of boxes from a lot of different angles. So if I have a family trust, I may not be that great at knowing what investments should go where in order for that to grow. And by partnering with the Community Foundation, I don't have to. I can just hand that off to you and you will make sure that my money is taken care of and grows. And then the flip side of that is I also may not want to sort through 300 grant applications in order to give money to a little league team or to a cancer patient at Valley Health. You take care of that as well. And I still get to play a role, but I don't have to do the heavy lifting.
Correct. And a couple of other benefits when you give charitably and you want to take the tax donation. If you give 20 different donations, you have to collect the 20 different letters and keep the paperwork. If you work through the Community Foundation, you can write one check to the Community Foundation. That covers your paperwork because we're the nonprofit. And then if you have a fund, we have an online portal. You can go in and you can give away that money over time and not have to collect the letter because you've received it from us. And so we make it easy. Like, for example, my family has a small fund. And we talk about you don't have to have a large fund. We started, I think I put $500 in, and then I just kept putting money in and money in. And it's grown to $18,000. It's a part of my wife and I and my children's legacy giving. And so I can log in every year and give 500 here or 200 here throughout the year without having to collect the paperwork for the Internal Revenue Service. So it's actually an ease. And then the other part about investing with the foundation is we have an investment committee. We're very careful with who's on that committee. They're professionals, they understand the investment, and it doesn't turn over that frequently. And so we keep it fresh. Where we found one of the things that'll happen was a lot of nonprofits or individuals will start off paying attention. And over time, as board members change or as people get older, they stop paying attention and then their funds aren't being managed the way they should. So, because we're at the scale of the $17 million and we have an investment committee that's a committee within the board, and we have Mason advisors, it's a more consistent investment over time because this is what we do. This is our mission, is to hold these funds, invest these funds, and work with nonprofits.
Nancy, as executive director of the organization, you are very much boots on the ground. You're out meeting with nonprofits, you're talking to donors, you're figuring out what the landscape is so that you can be a resource to everyone that's involved and partners with the Community Foundation as well.
Yeah, in fact, I think that's my greatest role. And it's what I love doing because I come from the nonprofit community myself. And I know how hard nonprofits are struggling right now. And they're not able to think about sustainability, or they're not able to go out and talk to potential donors to help them get a new van that they need because their van broke down. I was talking with Andrea Cousins at CCAP. They are trying to replace a van. And then yesterday, I was meeting with Lauren Klaus at Winchester Rescue Mission. I said, "What are your needs? What can we help you with?" She said, "We really need a van." I said, "Wow, that's a recurring thing." But what I can go back and do is research our donor profiles. Who's interested in homelessness? Who's interested in food insecurity? And try to connect the philanthropists with the nonprofits, whether it's through a grant disbursement or maybe they go in and do a direct donation. I don't know. It's up to them. But I'm the conduit between the philanthropists and the nonprofits. And boy, that's a great service. As a former development director of a small grassroots nonprofit, I wish I had tapped into that when I had an opportunity. And the other nice thing to tell nonprofits is that I know you're in the weeds just trying to make it through the week and serve your constituents. But you also need to think about long-term sustainability. And if you set up a fund with the nonprofit association, you're not required to give a lot of money. We do have a minimum of $5,000 that you need to keep in your fund, but you don't have to start with $5,000. Like Erik said with his family fund, he chipped in $500. Now it's over $18,000. One thing that nonprofits may not be aware of is, in addition to not having to invest a lot of money into starting a fund, once that fund grows over time, you can use that to pay for your operational expenses, which are very rarely covered by grants. If you're lucky enough to find an indirect grant, it's a unicorn, but most grants do not cover operational expenses. So, for example, I was talking to a nonprofit the other day, and their goal is to grow their fund to $2 million because they know that after they reach that point, all of their operations will be covered for the entire year, just based on the dividends. So that's one thing I think nonprofits need to be aware of, because you can't always count on grants being there from year to year, and you need to diversify your funding sources.
Oh yeah, if we've never learned that before, we've certainly learned it so far this
Yeah,
year.
indeed.
That's a really important thing too, I think, for just the general public to understand and realize, is that not every nonprofit in the Shenandoah Valley has an endowment. They don't have a bank account sitting somewhere with zeros and commas in it that if funding gets cut or a van breaks down, that they can just go into that account, write a check, and cover those expenses. We have a lot of very small nonprofits here in the area, and this sounds like a great opportunity to start small and build that endowment so that they do have that years from now when something happens.
Yeah, and we've seen this at the community foundation. Once you establish a fund and you become part of the ecosystem of the nonprofits, you never know what's going to happen. So I'll tell the story. 10 years ago, the executive director at the time came into my office and she was just ecstatic. She couldn't contain herself. And I said, "What's happening? What's going on?" And she said, "Someone left us $1 million." And I said, "What?" And she said, "Someone left us $1 million." And I said, "Who is it?" She said, "I don't know." I said, "Well, why don't we know?" She said, "We don't have any record of her." I said, "Who is she?" She said, "The only thing I could find was she was a single lady who had just a normal job, wasn't a wealthy lady." And I said, "Well, have we ever contacted her?" She said, "No." I said, "What can you find out?" She said, "The only thing that I found out was she read an article about us in the newspaper and felt compelled. And in her will, since she had no children or any family members, she left us $1 million." That's sort of the magic, is if you have a fund and you're exposed and you're part of the system, someone may do that. And as this generation starts to retire and move on or pass away, I think there's a lot of folks that want to leave a legacy. And to do that, they want to make sure that their legacy is protected and managed properly. And that's where the foundation comes in, because they could draw up an agreement with very strict instructions on how the funds are invested, how the money's used, and contingency plans beyond that. So it puts the donors at ease because they know that this is a formal agreement. We follow the agreements and they can continue to give well beyond and support the nonprofits that they believe in.
Let's take a break. When we come back, let's talk about the other side of it, that distribution side. I know that you're involved with chain of checks, coats for kids. There's a lot of other things that people are, oh, wait, I've heard of chain of checks, but they may not realize that that is something that is managed by the community foundation. And then talk a little bit too about these grants that you give out every year. Can we do that in the next segment?
Absolutely.
We are on the Zooms today talking with the Community Foundation of Northern Shenandoah Valley. Nancy Baker, their executive director, is joining us, as well as Erik Beatley. He is their board chair. We're going to come back and do more of that in just a couple of minutes. Got a few hours to give? You could make a local nonprofit's day. On September 19th, United Way NSV invites you to join over 900 volunteers for Day of Caring, the region's biggest single-day volunteer event. You'll help nonprofits across the valley by painting, landscaping, organizing donations, or doing light repairs. Whatever's needed. No special skills, just a willingness to help. Whether you're solo or part of a team, your time will make a real difference. Sign up today at unitedwaynsv.org/Day of Caring. Be part of something bigger. Help us care for the valley together. Welcome back to the Valley today. I am your host, Janet Michael. We are on the Zooms today talking with the Community Foundation of Northern Shenandoah Valley. Nancy Baker is joining us. She is their executive director. Erik Beatley is on the screen with us as well. He is their board chair. We've been talking a little bit about the structure of the Community Foundation, as well as all of the other things that come along with being a partner with the Community Foundation. Nancy, we talked a lot in the first segment about the investment side. Someone who wants to start a family trust or start a fund, whether they have $500 or $5 million, it really is fairly simple to get your foot in the door with the Community Foundation. But how does it look from the other side? Both of you mentioned a grant portal. How complicated or easy is that for nonprofits to be able to say, hey, remember me over here? I want to do this. Explain how the portal works.
Sure. And it's really a great setup. So the grant portal typically opens in early April, but a month before that, we hold a training, just a webinar that's open to anybody, any nonprofits who want to attend. And we go through the portal and how to navigate it and how to fill out the application. We go through each section of the application to help give the nonprofits a heads up on the content that they need to have prepared ahead of time to have a very smooth process. So then when the grant portal opens in early April, they can go out into the portal, fill out one application, and be considered for numerous types of grants. And it's filtered according to their service area. And then they are paired with philanthropists who are in their interest area, the philanthropist's interest area. And so it's all filtered. And then we have a really great team who reads every application. And I understand there was quite a bump in applications this year, which kept our grant team very busy reviewing all of those grants. But they have a scoring system. And then they get together and they make recommendations to the donors who want to select their own recipients. Sometimes they will provide recommendations based on the scoring and the interest area. Some donors want to put their funds into the general grant pool, which is great. It's a pretty streamlined process. Our grants team has been together for quite a long time. They've got it down to a science, and we're going through that selection process now. So I'm sending some recommendations to individual donors who want to select from 3 options versus going through 60 plus applications, which is very time consuming, but it's very easy to navigate. We keep in touch with you throughout the process. We're really a partner to the nonprofit community and to the philanthropists who are looking to leave their legacies. So it's the best of both worlds for me.
And it doesn't cost anything. There's no fee associated with a nonprofit signing up and being part of that portal. Even if they think, I have this nonprofit that offers this very specific service that typically people don't necessarily want to give grants for, you have such a diverse group of people that are giving to the community foundation to then redistribute. They should still sign up and be part of that portal. So if something happens and lo and behold, here's some grant money available, or a donor says, I've not ever done that before, but that looks interesting to me, they should still all be signed up and be part of that portal.
Absolutely. Anytime you have opportunities, it's just invaluable for nonprofit development directors, executive directors. The more opportunities that are out there, the better. It's so time consuming doing the research on grants and filtering through to see what you can apply for and what you can apply for. And sometimes you get down into the weeds and then you find out, oh, they're only funding nonprofits in Wyoming. Grant Station is one application that I used to use, which is great, but it's very time consuming. So I feel like our portal provides opportunities to just make one application, and if there's a good fit, they can go on a date, see if it works.
I love that analogy. That is perfect. And Erik, we were talking during the break that the Community Foundation is considering a second portal for scholarships, because that's something else. These poor kids these days have to have 400 different applications in 400 different places. I think it's a really good idea for you guys to explore that a little bit more.
Yeah, so looking at the success of the online grant application and how streamlined it is, a side benefit is we've uncovered a lot of smaller nonprofits that don't have a full-time executive director, or maybe have a part-time, that they don't have a development team. They can just go on, it's super simple, and now they're part of the system. And so we also have several scholarships, and we're looking at adding several more scholarships. Part of the software package that we have with the C-suite is they have a scholarship portal. And so we've been having conversation within the community. And if anybody wants to chime in, you can certainly email Nancy or myself. We're looking into rolling out a scholarship portal. So it'd be a one-stop shop. So anybody that wants to run their scholarship through the foundation, we would be the funnel to have the students go online, fill out the scholarship applications, and we could funnel those applications based upon the same criteria as a grant and give those to the decision makers of the scholarships. And ultimately, I believe, get more applicants, because applying for scholarships is It's not the easiest thing in the world. It's time consuming. But if we could fill one application out, get seen by many, like we do our grants, I think it's a win-win for the community. So this is something we're actively looking at. So if you have anything to do with scholarships and you want to reach out and have a conversation, please feel free to reach out.
I think I just heard a collective yes, please from every parent of a high schooler in the Shenandoah Valley.
Yes, but to make this work, we would need the folks that administer the scholarships. So we have our own, but there's also a tremendous number. And we don't want to be part of the selection process. We could just be part of the technology funnel that takes the applications, sorts them based upon the criteria, and hands them over to the decision makers that have always been a decision maker. And to me, that's a huge service to the community. And that's one of the benefits of a community foundation is the other services that we provide that help support the community.
So let's talk for a second about, I mentioned it a few minutes ago about Coats for Kids. As we're sitting here today having a conversation, you just had the kickoff. As people are listening on the radio, it was technically last week. Tell me a little bit about Coats for Kids.
Coats for Kids was a project that I've been involved with from the beginning about 13 years ago. It's a partnership between the Winchester Rotary Club and the Community Foundation. We wanted to create another fundraiser. And so we had a small committee and we met and we said, we don't need another fundraiser. Why don't we try to solve a problem? And one of the members said, well, there's this nonprofit that sells new coats that you have to give away. And they bought 250 last year for Winchester. This donor did. And they gave them all away, but they weren't able to do it again. So we said, okay, we'll do that. So the first year we bought 250 coats 13 years ago. We're now up to over 1,000 coats a year that we purchase. So we raise $24,000+ a year with Rotary and the Community Foundation. We have distribution partners. So I'd like, if I could, to give a shout out to my distribution partners because they've been great. So we have CCAP, Fremont Street Nursery, Winchester, Frederick County Bright Futures, Froggy's Closet, Timber Ridge School, and Winchester Day Preschool. And so the real magic with that is early on, we decided we were going to build a Winchester Rotary Club Coats for Kids endowment fund. And my goal was back then, because when we thought it was only 250 to 500 coats, we said, well, if we could just get 200,000 and the investment income, the 4% distribution would pay for the coats forever. Well, fast forward, it's now over 1,000 coats. So my new goal is around 500,000 to 600,000. But as we reported today, we have about $280,000 in the endowment fund that if we can continue to grow, at some point, this will be a self-sustaining program and we won't have to continue to raise funds. And so we're kind of running a dual track. We're raising the money for year-to-year coats, and we're trying to build the endowment. So at some point, I can retire and the committee can retire from fundraising, and the investment income will fund the coats forever. And that's really the magic of what a community foundation can do.
And let me just tell you how genius I think that entire fundraiser is, because I would buy coats until the cows come home for kids. But it's complicated on my end because do I get them just for boys or do I get them for girls? And what sizes should I get? And how am I going to get them to somebody who can get them to somebody that needs them? And instead, I can just write you a check and say, hey, go buy 10 coats and make sure they're going to the kids that actually need them. I think that whole process is genius.
Yeah, the neat thing is many of our distribution partners, we have a name and a size for the kids. So there's a significant number of our coats that we know the kid. And then through our other distribution partners, they encounter a kid in school who they say, hey, this kid's coming, it's 10 degrees out, and this little 7-year-old's coming consistently to school without a coat. They can reach into that inventory and give that kid a coat. CCAP runs a Christmas giveaway where they know the names and then they bring the kids in. In the early days, Rotarians would give the kids would come up and we would size them and we would give them the coats. So now, but they have a more streamlined process, but it really is neat because it's such a one-to-one connection. When you see the kid that you're giving a coat to, and then you look at the parents and you see the relief in their face. These are the memories that I'll never forget in the early days of Coats for Kids. And it's really everybody on the committee's motivation to continue to raise and then to get us to that $600,000 goal.
Nancy, if someone's listening today and now they want to make $1,000 donation to that Coats for Kids endowment, or they're thinking to themselves, wait, I've got $500 or even the 5,000 out of the gate, and I want to set up something to pay for summer camps, or I just want to start something now and I'll figure out where I'm going to give it out later down the road. What is the best first thing for them to do? Should they call you? Should they go to your website? How do they start that process?
I would first go to the website, which is CFNSV.org. Stands for Community Foundation, the Northern Shenandoah Valley. Once you're on our homepage, click the tab that says Give, and then there are numerous ways you can give. You can select what you want to give to, where you want to give to, what you want to give. And Coats for Kids and Chain of Checks are two community campaigns we run every year, and those are on a separate tab, I believe. But it's pretty easy to navigate, or you can just do a search. Please donate.
If you're someone who is thinking about legacy giving or even just contributing to legacy giving, just reach out through the website and send Nancy an email, and we'd be happy to spend some time with you and talk about it. There's a lot of different options. We've only scratched the surface here today, but we have so many other different options that we would sit and work with you or talk to you about them. And at the end of the day, if you find something that you find meaningful, great. If we just give you a little bit of education and you go a different way, that's great too. It's just part of helping the community.
Erik, thank you for taking the time to chat with me today. I do appreciate it. Nancy, thank you for reaching out and buying my coffee. That's how you always can get yourself guaranteed a slot on the show, is you say, hey, Janet, I'll buy you a cup of coffee if we can talk about a show idea. And then you show up wearing orange. I mean, not everybody can do it the way Nancy does. But Nancy pulled out all the stops. Orange heels. She had the whole thing going on that day.
Oh, yeah. I was paying homage.
Thank you. I look forward to talking to you again. I think in the fall we decided that you're going to come back on and talk about who is going to be the recipient of some of these grants. So I appreciate your time today and being willing to come back again in the fall.
Thank you, Janet.
Thank you.
I will be back tomorrow with a brand new episode of The Valley Today, a few minutes after noon. So meet me here then.